For those of you who are already on, we're going to give it another couple of minutes to let a few other folks dial in, and also make sure that we enable the chat feature, because we certainly want to hear from all of you. Your burning questions for Kerry. We like the really hard ones. We want to put her on the spot. And then we're also going to make this interactive. So we are going to use the chat function, but we also have some polls on some of the topics that we are going to be discussing today. And so it'd be great for everyone to engage in the polls. No trick questions. We just want to get your feedback on some of the topics that we're discussing. Let's see, Rachel, did that work?
Sorry, what were we working on? The chat function? I'm still working on getting that chat function up and going, but for now the Q&A is still open.
Oh, perfect. All right, let's give it just a few more seconds. We have about 55 people that are live with us today. All right, Kerry, are you ready? You ready to get started?
I'm ready, yes.
Awesome, awesome. All right, everyone. Well, let's go ahead and begin. And I want to start by saying Happy Women's History Month. It is a really great time to celebrate women all month long. And in 2 days, it's International Women's Day. So I think there's no better time to welcome you to the Women in Travel Thrive webinar. It's the first webinar of 2024. And we hope to have more webinar series moving forward to add more value to our Thrive members. And today we are discussing influential leadership. We're going to talk about building your personal brand, building your influential network, and building your personal confidence. I know those are topics that are near and dear to all of our hearts, and it doesn't matter what level of position you are in leadership, these are really important topics. So I'm excited to be here today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa Maher, and I am an advisor for Women in Travel Thrive and have been for the last several years. And I'm also the CEO and founder of Pinnacle Enterprises Group. And we are a female-led firm that does executive coaching and hospitality consulting. And so before we begin, I want to start by thanking Highgate. Highgate Hotels. If you want to go to the next slide, I want to show some fancy faces here. Thank you to Highgate Hotels. Highgate has been a friend of Women in Travel Thrive for several years and is a sponsor of our webinar today and of Thrive in general. Many of you know Encore. Encore is the Chief Commercial Officer at Highgate Hotels and has been there many, many years and is really an ally and a supporter. So I want to say a special thank you to him. And I also want to do a very special welcome to Kerry Mack, who joins us today. And Kerry is the Chief Revenue Officer for Highgate Hotels, has also spent a long time at Highgate and has seen many changes in the hospitality business over the years at Highgate. And Kerry joins us today, and she's going to talk about her career journey and how she built her personal brand, how she developed sponsors in the business, how she gained confidence, and she's going to talk about some tips and her journey along the way. So welcome to Kerry.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
I know everyone's very excited to have you here based on all of the comments and feedback that we've heard on social media. And while I'm going to interview Kerry, we also want to hear from you. So as I mentioned, we want to hear your questions. So post them in chat or Q&A. And Kerry and I will answer those questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And Rachel's going to help us with that and guide us along so that we can answer as many questions. And before we welcome Kerry and have a fireside chat with her, I want to share a few quick stats with you on why building your personal brand is so important and why developing and growing your confidence and being able to advocate for yourself is so important. So I'll go through these quickly and then we'll get to Kerry. So first of all, C-level executives who engage in personal branding efforts are perceived more trustworthy, and that translates into a 31% higher increase in shareholder value for their company. So personal branding has benefits for you personally, but also for your company. When you think about your personal benefits, it's being seen as a thought leader, being seen as more trustworthy, attracting more talent, retaining more talent. And then there's the financial benefits for your company. So some pretty amazing stats there, 31% higher shareholder value. And if we go to the next benefit, if you think about the value of online presence, I know a lot of times people putting themselves out there on LinkedIn or professional online presence avenues is kind of scary, but there's a couple of compelling stats that I think really stand out. 70% of employees use social media to screen applicants, and 57% of employers are less likely to even interview a candidate if they can't find them online or if their online profile is crummy. So just some interesting stats to keep in mind. And then Kerry and I are going to talk about the importance of advocacy and the importance of growing your network. 85% of jobs are filled via networking. If anybody knows people right now, they're looking for jobs. A lot of them are not hearing back from HR or from recruiters, but they are hearing back when they use their networks to reach out for a job. And having advocates is important, not just in finding a job, but just in general. A senior leader at LinkedIn was quoted saying, advocates can not only help you discover new job opportunities, but can also help vouch for your skills, your character, and your potential to decision makers in your industry. And I underline the words in your industry because a lot of times, particularly younger in people's career, they think about advocates just in their own company. I want to make sure that you think about advocates and building your advocates inside your company and outside of company, so through your industry. And then let's talk about the significance of confidence and self-advocacy. So you want to have advocates that stand out and cheerlead and support you, but you also want to be able to advocate for yourself, which is, I know, sometimes very hard to do, but Kerry and I will talk about some of the ways to do that. We've all heard this stat, but I thought it was valuable enough to repeat. Hewlett-Packard did a study a while ago that said men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, and women wait until they meet 100%. So confidence, even more than competence, can significantly influence one's willingness to pursue new opportunities and advocate for oneself. And then diving a little bit deeper in the topic of self-confidence, University of Melbourne did an interesting study that said those with higher self-confidence earn higher wages and get promoted more. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Confident leaders tend to be more assertive in negotiating salaries and promotions and are more likely to take on stretch projects and are more resilient. And if you think about resiliency and if you think about adaptability, those are two traits that are more important than ever. Think about COVID, being resilient, being adaptable, really over the last couple of years has shown us that that's a really top skill. So those are just a handful of stats that are why we're having this discussion today and why Kerry is joining us to really talk to us about some of the things that are burning in her mind that she wants to share with you. So let's welcome Kerry.
Hello.
If I may interject just 1 minute, ladies, I do have a question from the audience. Jennifer was wondering if they think that this is because women suffer from imposter syndrome more than men.
Oh, that's a great question. Kerry, do you want to jump in and take that?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think that I think that the self-confidence issue is probably sort of the number one. I don't know about imposter syndrome, but I think the lack of self-confidence is the number one issue, and the sort of underlying fear of, if I'm not perfect at what I'm doing now, I can't get to the next level, or if I don't know every asset of the job, I'm not going to even be considered. So why go for it? Or if the qualifications on the job description are, you need to have 5 years of this experience, 2 years of this experience, know this system, know that system, that if it's not on my resume, that I wouldn't even be looked at. So why even apply for it, right? That it's almost like we take things too literally, where I don't think some of our male counterparts even read that deep into it. That it's sort of, oh, this is the general gist of the job. I could generally do that. Great, let me apply, right? So I think it's more of we get into the weeds and the details of it too much and sort of talk ourselves out of it before we even try for it.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And I think you alluded to it, the self-talk. It's interesting. I've done a lot of studies on personal branding and confidence, and having a stronger personal brand, one of the benefits is less self-talk and more confidence. So absolutely agree with that. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Kerry, for those people that don't know you or don't know your background, I'd love for you just to talk about your career journey. You've had an impressive resume and have reached a pinnacle role as Chief Revenue Officer, and love to have you talk about your experience with Highgate.
Sure. I have been with Highgate for almost 19 years. We are now at just a little over 500 hotels. But when I started with Highgate in 2005, we had about 5 hotels. So it's definitely been a journey and a completely changing company over those 19 years. Before I started with Highgate, I was corporate director of revenue, but at much smaller companies. It was always companies that had independent hotels, 2, 3, 4, 5 hotels at the most, independent hotels, family-owned hotels, smaller company hotels. So coming into Highgate was really sort of a different, even with when we only had 5 hotels, it was sort of a different ball game. We had branded hotels, we worked with REITs, we worked with bigger institutional financial firms. It was something I was really never exposed to before in my career. So even though I was really confident in my revenue management skills and my sort of regional revenue management skills, I was dealing with a whole different level of um, ownership groups and brands and investors that I had never experienced before in my career. So it was a huge learning curve for me those first few years at Highgate. But starting sort of way back, I started in operations, because when I started in the hospitality business, there was no revenue management. It didn't even exist as a discipline back then. So I'm dating myself, but it was it was reservations. There was no OTAs, there was no hotel websites, there was none of that. It was a reservations department, and you had a GDS, and you had an in-house reservations department, and that was about it. So, for the first 5 years of my career, it was operations, and I was really, in my mind, I thought, on a track to become a general manager, which at the time was going to be a big feat, because there were, I think at the time, 2 female general managers in New York City in the early 90s. And it was going to be a big uphill battle back then. And after 5 years of operations, I realized, oh gosh, I'm not sure I really want to do this. I love the hotel business, but I don't think I love operations. Thank goodness revenue management started to become a discipline. And that was where I made my first sort of jump over into that discipline. And so I really sort of grew up with what when reservations turned into revenue management, and I grew up with the discipline through the years. So, so that has sort of been my journey, and spent most of my journey in revenue management with Highgate.
I love it. Highgate is such a great brand and such a great product. And one of the things I love so much about Highgate is the culture that the company has. And clearly, you've been there for the long ride and have helped build that culture. So just compliments. I know Highgate was actually, when I was at Expedia, I was at Expedia for 21 years. Highgate was one of our very first partners, and it just was an amazing partnership. And so thank you for that. And thank you for building such a great culture in the industry.
Thank you.
And so as we stay on the topic of personal branding, can you talk about how you've grown your personal brand, or how you've used your personal brand to open doors for you, whether it be inside Highgate or whether it be outside Highgate?
Yeah, I think it sort of came naturally for me through the years, and I think sort of, like I said, growing up with the discipline, it helped a little bit, because I was of that first group of directors of revenue in New York City. I sort of became known as one of the people who had a name of being known in New York City as a go-to person for revenue management. So I developed that reputation pretty early on, but I think I was able to expand upon it because I really had a thirst for knowledge about everything that there was about the discipline. It was a new discipline back then. Everyone was trying to figure out how it could grow, expand, who had the secret sauce, how we could make more money, what did it mean to forecast, how you could be the best forecaster, what were the new tools. As new tools were being introduced, what was the one that was going to take off, what were the ones that were going to fail. And I was of the mindset that everything was so new, you actually didn't know what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. So I felt strongly that you should learn everything, test everything, befriend everyone, and learn as much as you could. And I always kept an open mind, and I always kept in touch with vendors, partners, and whatnot through the years, and to see where their careers took them. Some of them left the industry, some of them went into other parts of the discipline, some of them went into other parts of the industry. But I think sort of keeping that network through those years sort of built my brand, my personal brand, as someone who was the go-to for revenue management knowledge. And that if you had a question or you wanted an opinion on something, that that I was sort of someone you could come to, and that I would always give an honest opinion on what something was. And I hear through the years now that people still come to me for their honest opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm still known to give an honest opinion on revenue management, whether it's a tool, a strategy, a pro forma, anything that has to do with the revenue management discipline in general. And that's sort of what my brand has been, sort of revenue management, all in everything. So.
That I love that. I think you have some key traits of when I think about personal branding, and the work that I've done is authentic. You give your true opinion and transparency. And I love the fact that you're continuously curious and learning. I think those are amazing traits that you have that really help with personal branding. That's great.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. So one of the things that I hear sometimes from leaders is that personal branding is just a vanity pursuit. And I hear this a lot from coaching clients, that perhaps their bosses say that when they're trying to build their network and build their brand. I actually think it is a strategic necessity. And so my question, Kerry, is what do you think are some of the common misperceptions out there about building a brand, and how can people, men or women, overcome that?
I'd say a misconception would be that you have to build a brand as far as um, being something that you're not, or putting a label on something, trying to be, you know, like a social media icon, or creating a persona that's not who you are, and that's not something that you could actually fulfill, because that's not who you are on a day-to-day basis, right? So it's really more about, like, who do you want to be at the end of the day? Like, I don't have a hard time keeping up with it because it's who I naturally am, right? So, if you are in sales and your ultimate goal in life is to be a kick-ass sales leader or sales seller, or meet your sales goal every year, then that should be your brand. Your brand should be about sell, 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 sell. And what does that mean to you? Does that mean people know to come to you because you follow up quickly, you get them what they need to get, you anticipate their needs, right? Like, what does that mean for you to get to your end goal, right? If you want to be a chief revenue officer, and your personal brand is to be all-knowing in revenue management, then your personal brand needs to be that people need to know that you are the go-to person on knowledge base, on distribution, on systems, on OTA partners, on whatever it is, right? That this is what it is. If you're in HR, that you're the go-to person on labor laws, on hiring, on sourcing talent, on internships, right? So, I mean, I think it's more about, what do you want to do in your personal career, and what do you want to be known for, that you can actually follow through on.
Yeah, that's great. I love you tie back in the being authentic, and the knowing your lane and what you want to be known for, I think is really important. And
Mm-hmm.
my business coach actually says, know your lane and stay in your lane. You can't be in a different lanes and be seen as, a thought leader or really developing your personal brand. So I love what you said there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's do this. Let's get the audience engaged a bit. And Rachel, let's put a poll. All right, here is the poll. So we're going to combine personal branding and leadership presence. So on personal branding and leadership presence, how confident do you feel about your personal brand and your leadership presence? Very confident, somewhat confident, not confident, but working on it, or not confident at all? All right, let's get active in the polls and see folks voting. And while we're doing that, just remember, you can always ask Kerry a question in the Q&A. So feel free to type a question in there.
We do have one question while we are waiting. So let's just see here. Tara says, first, you both look and are fabulous. So kudos to you. How often do you hold your tongue or hold back in your first opinion? More or less than you did in the past as you progressed up the executive level?
I don't hold my tongue as often as I should. So it's probably something I should work on more. So I think that's the New Yorker in me. It depends on my audience, honestly. It depends what meeting I'm in and what audience I'm around. But if I feel very strongly about something and I have facts and figures to back it up, then I do not hold my tongue at all.
Same thing. And I just want to call out Tara, because Miss Stengel here, she doesn't know this, but I actually, in my personal branding workshop that I do, I actually use her as an example of someone who online is super authentic and vulnerable. She's about fun, and her posts, her LinkedIn description is about fun, and really her authentic personality shines through. And I agree. I think facts and figures are super important when you're speaking up. I also think, you never want to walk out of a meeting thinking, oh, shoot, I should have made that point, and then circle back and talk to someone separately when you had an opportunity to discuss that. So if you have your facts and figures, be confident to speak up and try really hard to not let that self-doubt, come into play. That we've all had situations where we've said something in a meeting and we've gone, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And you start sweating. But what's the worst that's going to happen? You're most likely not going to die. You're most likely not going to get fired. And, I had a situation where when I was at Expedia, I said something that I thought was crazy, and I literally was sweating everywhere. And our CEO came up to me after the meeting and said, Barry Diller, our chairman, said that was the best lodging discussion we've had in history. And here I lost 5 pounds sweating after something that I had made. But to Carrie's point, I had the facts and figures, but also had the confidence to say it.
I have a quick follow-up question with that. Do you have to hold your tongue because you're a woman?
Not anymore, but I would say in my early 30s, I probably held my tongue more than I should have, because there was a time when I was the only female in the room, and I was younger, and it was intimidating. But it doesn't feel, I mean, I'm older now, and I'm not the only female in the room anymore. So, there's a little bit more strength in numbers. So I don't feel that anymore. And it's different. It's a different era than it was 20 years ago.
Carrie, do you think that having advocates, whether they're female or males, has, changed as you look at over the last 20 years and holding your tongue?
I think advocates helped my career in other ways. I think times have changed, and it's hard for me to judge because I was a really young VP. So it's hard for me to say if it was because I was a female or if I was young, right? So it's like it's hard to figure out what it was, and was it that I was young by a lot in a lot of those rooms, or what was the balance of power.
Right.
But it was through the years, and it was, and I think we talk about it a little bit later on. It was being able to figure out, okay, well, what were some of the reasons where I was afraid to speak up, or why, and what did I need to do to overcome that? And a lot of it was being prepared walking into those rooms, right? And having facts and figures ready to go, and almost over preparing to the point of having every answer ready to go for any question asked, of the most minutia detail, because I wanted to be able to answer any question thrown out there. So I didn't get tongue-tied or was able to speak up.
Yeah. That goes to being prepared is so important. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm actually very pleased to see the polls here. It looks like the somewhat confident is the highest rated answer in this. So sounds like everyone is doing a fairly good job. There are a few people not confident but working on it, but very excited to see that 0% answered not confident at all. So that is great. All right. Do you want to take a couple more questions before we move on to executive and leadership presence?
Sure.
Oh, that was my cue. Okay, so
I was gonna say I can't see them, so
no, I'm sorry. Can you, Jennifer asked, can you have two or a split topic? For example, I'm a hospitality tech seller and an advocate for infertility support and education.
I'll jump in, Carrie, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm a very big believer in this. That I think you can have a couple. I don't think you can have 4, 5, 6, or 7, because I don't think you can be good at everything. And the reason I jumped in quickly on this is in my new chapter of life, I'm doing 2 different roles. I'm an executive coach, and I'm also doing hospitality consulting and advisory work. And I think you have to figure out where your passion is and where you can spend your time. And the one thing I learned early on as a new entrepreneur is you can't pick both things and spend 100% of time on both. So you have to figure out what is the balance. But if you're passionate in both and you can figure out the balance, I absolutely think you can be successful and flourish in both.
So we also have a raised hand from Nicole. I can allow her to do her question live if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself, Nicole, and share your question.
I didn't have a question. I think I pressed that accidentally. However, I will say Kerry Mack is the queen, and we should all aspire to be her when we grow up.
I love that.
And I was able to answer very confidently on that poll because I learned from the best.
Oh,
Very sweet.
Thank you, Nicole.
that's great. Awesome.
We do have from Mickey. I believe that a key attribute to building your brand is to own your results and approach everything with the goal of making things better. Do you feel that sometimes that you have to consistently cross swim lanes, and how do you overcome resistance?
Well, let's see. I guess cross swim lanes. I will say I do try to make things better for my team. It is not always easy, right? Because some of the things where you try to make things better cost money, and you don't always have money in hotels to do things better. So we try to do what we can to get them the most benefit for what we can in a given year, whether it's staffing, whether it's new tools, whether it is changing them to different hotels if they want a change of pace or something else. Changing swim lanes, I don't really feel that too much, honestly. I feel like I think in my company and in my world, because we focus so much on commercial strategies, that's really where our swim lane is, and most of what we deal with is in commercial strategies. So I don't really think too much sort of goes out of that swim lane for me. But yeah, I think employee satisfaction and keeping our team happy and motivated is really very important to their success and our success. So it actually is a big part of what we try to accomplish here, and a big part of what I take very seriously as part of our job, my job.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's all we have for right now.
Okay, let's jump into another topic that I think is important, and that's leadership and executive presence. And some people say leadership presence, some people say executive presence. And people often say, I actually used to get this a lot, but I get it a lot more in my coaching practice when I have people that are coming in wanting me to coach their senior leaders or their high potentials. They say, I really want him or her to focus on enhancing their executive presence. And the first thing that I say to them is, what does that mean to you? Because I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And one of the ways that I describe it is, I took this from some of the research that I did, and an author that I have spent time reading. She did a book on executive presence, and she says, executive presence is the ability to project gravitas, confidence, poise under pressure, and decisiveness, as well as the ability to communicate clearly and with warmth. And I thought that was an interesting description. And Kerry, so two-part question here. First, how do you describe executive presence, or would you describe it any differently? And then strategies have you found for enhancing your leadership or executive presence over the years?
I love that description, so I'm gonna have to send it to me because I want to steal it. But I think, I think in a company like Highgate, we are big, we are very spread out, and I think that to me, the most important part of leadership is actually showing up for your team, showing a presence, and having constant communication with them. So although I can't spend a lot of one-on-one time with them because there's just not enough days in a year to really do that. I do try to, there's at least one monthly email, but unfortunately there's a lot of weekly emails that go out. But there's constant communication to me directly to the directors of revenue and the revenue analysts. They know that when we say it's an open door policy, that's not just lip service, that really actually is an open door policy, that any of them can reach out to us at any time, and call us, video chat, about any topic. We have also been very clear from the beginning of Highgate that this is not a us versus them mentality, meaning that yes, we're the leaders of the organization, but we're also an extension of the team, and we're not a got you organization. We're here to make you successful. So if you're struggling with something, we need to know because we need to help you. We don't want to, we don't want to shame you, and we don't want to yell at you. We want to figure out what's wrong and help turn it around and get the strategy on the right path. So to us, leadership is really actually about leading and about showing them that we're in it for the long haul with them, and giving them the tools, setting up trainings and best practices, and going to these best practices and trainings with them, and actually, having constant communication with them, and showing them that it's not just here, do this, do this, do this. This is all part of the process, that we're leading them by example, basically. So to us, that is what we think has been really successful as part of our whole sort of discipline in Highgate.
I love the fact that you started with your team, and you've talked about team several times, which I think is a tribute to who you are as a leader. And I think clearly your team adored you. So that's great. It's really, I think that says a lot about you. And my question kind of would be, when you think about presence and different audiences, so you have your team, you have people that are new hires, you have your senior leaders. Do you think that you have to adapt your style based on the audience, and or do you just maintain your authentic self regardless who the audience is?
No, you definitely have to adapt. I mean, I definitely have team members that I know I can be tougher on, and that get my snarky sense of humor, and that I know won't take offense to it. I know that there are team members that don't do well with an email, that need a phone call, that can't just take direction in one way, and that really sort of need more hand holding than not. I know that and this isn't just about, right, this is a good life lesson not just for your team. This is actually a good life lesson for when you're dealing with clients, and when you're dealing with ownership groups, and when you're dealing with anyone, right? That it's knowing who your audience is, and it's that sort of like emotional intelligence portion of life, like knowing who you're speaking to and how to get across to them is really important. And what we try to tell our VPs and our directors of revenue too is, we always try to say the teach a man to fish parable, right? That when you have your analysts and you have your interns and you have your first year people, that you do have to take a lot of time to teach them and to spend time with the basics and the going over on how to do certain things, because if you don't take the time to teach them, they're never going to do it right. So you can't get frustrated that what you feel is an easy task because you've been doing it 5, 10 years already is taking them 2 to 3 weeks to learn, because sometimes it does take people that long to pick something up, but you doing it for them is never gonna help you move on in life if you don't actually teach them how to do it correctly, right? So yes, so knowing your audience is a huge part of leadership. And sometimes when people come on my team, I actually outright ask them and say that, listen, I'm a New Yorker and I'm direct. And so you need to tell me if I offend you in an email, because I won't do it again. But, like, you have to tell me. So, I'll call you the next time. But like, sometimes I'm tough in emails. Just, I'll deal with you a different way. It's fine.
That says a lot again about your leadership style and your communication style,
Yeah.
that transparency, that authentic nature.
Mhm.
I like what you said about knowing your audience, and I'm going to use that as to kind of pivot to the next topic of building networks and building advocates.
Mhm.
And if you think about building advocates, a lot of times it's challenging, particular for women, to build advocates. And as I said earlier, building advocates in their company and outside their company. So I know for you, you have many advocates at Highgate and clearly outside of Highgate. So what's your kind of secret sauce of building influential and strategic networks and building advocates that can support you?
Mhm. I mean, I think it really comes down to having a true relationship with people once you meet them, right? And once you really sort of see what their work ethic is and how they perform their tasks. And I would like to think that I am just as much as an advocate for other people as well. And, there are people that I've met for the first time who have pitched me a deal on something or pitched me a product. And I've been so impressed with the way they've sold me something that I've told them straight out, saying, this was, you know what, you've done your homework and this is great. And I'm really impressed with what you came to me with. And you can consider me an industry ally, right? Like, it's, I think it's important that that goes both ways, that this is, that if someone shows you that they're really good at what they do, all of us should be able to support each other in that way, right? I mean, this is the hospitality industry. We should be hospitable to each other. This is
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think I really didn't even set out to find it that way. I think it's happened naturally, and I think it's, I've always done it for people, and I think it's been done in kind for me just through the years.
Yeah. And when we think about someone who is uncomfortable about,
Mhm.
let's focus on building your network. Someone's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to put in practices and strategies to build their network, or it doesn't
Yeah.
come easy to them to
Mhm.
walk up to someone in a room
Mhm.
of 100 people that they don't know. Any
Right.
tips you would give our audience?
Well, I would say that of all of the industries on planet Earth, you are lucky because you have come to an industry where people love to talk about themselves and love to meet new people. So you should actually never feel worried about reaching out to someone to say, hi, I'm new to the industry and I want to learn more about you, because 9 times out of 10, the person would love to tell you everything about themselves. But if you feel that uncomfortable in a crowded room, but really do want to meet someone, then you should reach out to them on LinkedIn and you should invite them for a cup of coffee one-on-one, or offer to go to their office and bring them a cup of coffee at their own schedule, because I think my experience is people will say yes, that people in leadership positions do want to see the next generation succeed and come up and join this industry and succeed. And that, I always say yes to students who want to meet with me um and just learn and hear about stories. So you should never feel worried about reaching out to people.
Absolutely. And what I found is if you reach out to someone and they won't have that coffee or they don't have time for you, that's not the right person that you should be networking with or connecting with.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I love the reach out on LinkedIn. When I started my new career in executive and leadership coaching, I read a book from an author, and he had a very similar career to mine
Mhm.
in corporate America, high level job, working a ton, and started his own practice in coaching. And I read his book. And halfway through his book, I reached out to him on LinkedIn thinking he's never going to respond.
Mhm.
That was Thursday. And by Tuesday, I was on the phone with him. He had introduced me to 3 people in his network that
Mhm.
helped build my network and coaching. And so just that power of reaching out and just not worrying about if they don't, respond. I think
Right.
that's good advice.
Mhm.
All right, so let's getting a little bit short on time. So let's go to a popular topic is confidence and self-advocacy. And when we
Mhm.
think about, we've talked about having advocates and building your advocates and your sponsors, but people have a really hard time
Mhm.
usually advocating for themselves. So
Mhm.
confidence and self-advocacy, they're usually intertwined. Can you talk about a time where you've had to advocate for yourself, or
Mhm.
there's been a professional growth opportunity that where you've stood up for yourself, or you've built a good business case where that has helped you?
Mhm. I mean, I think in some ways you're always actually advocating for yourself. And I think that it should be a practice that you should sort of consistently do, meaning that I keep a running list of accomplishments, right? So as something sort of happens throughout the year, I keep a running list of sort of big things that have happened, whether it's a big contract that's been renegotiated, or a new technology that's been put in, or a new deal that's been brought in, right? I keep a running list of accomplishments, but on a smaller scale, I think it is, I don't want to say brag, but I think it's just as important to send out a hotel-wide email or a company-wide email to say, hey guys, this has just happened, and this was the efforts that went into it, and this is what came out of it, and this is how much business was brought in of it. I don't think that there's anything wrong about sharing the successes of something that has brought in top line revenue to a business that is above and beyond what is normally above your job scope. I think it is perfectly okay um to brag about it, really. And I've really sort of done that on and off throughout my entire career, no matter what position I've been in, and not in a way of ha ha, look at me, sort of as a this great news has happened, and this is what it's bringing into the entire hotel for everyone. Because, really, as you all know, top line revenue is good news for everyone on incentives, right? It helps everyone achieve goals. So it's a win for everyone, right? So it could be phrased in a way that's a big win for everyone. So, but I say to keep track of stuff because, we all know how our lives get, that, you do something in January and by March you have forgotten about it, right? So, you really have to keep track of what your wins are, and stuff that you're working on, separately. So, and that's the stuff that when you're going to advocate for for yourself, for promotions, for the next level, for the next job interview, for your resume, right? This is the sheet that you have to look at. This is what you have to reference back. And it's very hard to do months later. So you have to keep a running list of your big ticket wins.
Big ticket wins. I love that. I call it a brag book. And I think you're spot on. And one of the things that I say to some of my clients is after you've kept your running accomplishment list or your brag book, have someone else take a look at it, because people that are your peers or your teammates, people that work for you, your boss, they may have additional things that you've forgotten about. So utilize that to get other people's thoughts as well. And kudos to you for doing that. And I think we have a question. I'd also like to see some comments in chat of how people are feeling about self-advocacy, and are they scared to do it? Are they okay to do it? And as folks are typing in the chat, Rachel, you want to jump in with a question?
I sure do. I'd love, Haley would like to hear about your thoughts and advice on work-life balance. Usually being the only woman in the room, I feel I have to outperform to simply stay on track. In the last 6 years, I've tripled my compensation, but I really struggled to find balance and I'm working 12+ hour days. Is it worth it?
It's a hard question to answer. It depends. It depends the company you work for. It depends what position you're trying to get to. And it depends what your company expects of you. I mean, there are some companies at certain levels where there have to be a lot of hours put in. And so it's either that's the career you want and you're willing to give up other things because of it, or you're not, right? So it is a personal choice. I work and travel a lot, but it is what I wanted to do and it's what I've always wanted to do. So I don't feel like I am necessarily sacrificing a ton to give up, because that is what I want to do. So I think it's a personal decision, but that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Well said, Kerry. I think it is definitely is a personal choice. And Haley, I love the question. And I think you've got to kind of do the pros and cons. One of the reasons that I left the fabulous company of Expedia is I was working 16 hours a day and weekends and traveling nonstop. And I wanted to literally stop and smell the roses, which was the first thing I did. The day I left Expedia, I took a walk around the block and I noticed all these flowers and all these trees and things I hadn't noticed before as I walked every single day. So I think it is definitely a personal decision, and you've got to find the balance.
So we do have a couple responses that are going like in the chat that are going to just the hosts and panelists. So I wanted to share them with everybody. Someone says, I feel it's our responsibility to advocate for ourselves because we're modeling for our teams and younger team members. If they don't see us self-advocating, they may not feel comfortable doing so, and that would be unfortunate. Also, your answer was well loved by Lynn. Thank you, Kerry. And someone else said, self-advocacy is so important. Self includes myself and my team. And I choose to make self-advocacy a part of my branding and leadership. I find that one especially great. Yes, I love it. Thanks for sharing
that. Yeah, that's a great one, Sheila. I think too, some people, when they think about advocating for themselves, it's scary. But one of the tricks that you can do is advocate for other people. A ton of us are super passionate about our teams. And when you advocate for your teams or peers, or you support people on LinkedIn with their posts, commenting, when you're advocating and supporting someone else, they in turn recognize that and will advocate back for you. So it's an interesting dynamic of how it just, continues to happen over and over. I think there's another question or comment.
Just a couple, just another comment by Chris, who's inspired by the female generation coming up after us and those entering the workplace. Many talk of this generation negatively, but the value this generation places on their worth is inspiring. This generation of women is not afraid to ask for what they are worth and to advocate for their needs, both personally and in the workplace.
Well said, Chris. Good. So Kerry, we're going to do a poll on this, but we're going to close up time. So I'm just going to ask you,
Okay.
when we think about leadership skills, there are a lot that are critical and crucial. Some effective communication, strategic thinking. You talked about emotional intelligence. I talked about adaptability and innovation. Thanks you, John. So what do you think are the most important? And actually, maybe before you answer, let's start the poll so we can get
Yeah.
I threw it in there while you were talking. Just I was interesting to see the audience and what they thought too.
You're good.
Got it. I think, I mean, if you had to pick what is the most important for, oh gosh, I mean, they're all important. For travel, I would say it is probably, that's really hard to choose between one. I have to be honest. I think you really need adaptability and innovation because travel is always changing. Demand changes all the time. Travelers' needs changes all the time. Technology changes all the time, right? So you have to be able to move very, very quickly. And then communication is key because you have to communicate to an immense amount of shareholders, right? You have to communicate internally to GMs, to VPs, to internal ownership. You have to be able to communicate to outside ownership, to asset managers, to lenders, to whatnot, right? I mean, the amount of people you have to communicate to in this day and age is something you sort of never dreamed about when you first entered the industry all those years ago. So I'd say that those two actually almost are probably tied. And then I'd say strategic thinking and then emotional intelligence.
Looks like the audience agreed with you. They put emotional intelligence a little bit higher than strategic thinking, but clearly these are all very, very important skills.
Yeah. I have to say though, the one that is not on there that should be is organizational skills.
Yeah.
That if you're a leader, you really have to have your own sort of organizational sort of method to the madness to keep yourself in check and not let all those balls in the air drop.
That is true. A lot going on. Busy industry.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, we've just got 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get everybody out on time. I know a lot of people are at conferences and have work events next. I want to do a very, very special thank you to Kerry, who is clearly a badass in the industry and just an amazing female leader, and to Highgate Hotels, who is just amazing partner of Thrive, amazing partner to many of us in the industry. And so a giant thank you. And a thank you to all of you who took time to join us today and to focus on your leadership influence and developing your own skills. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm an advisor for Thrive, but I also do have my own coaching and executive practice. And I'm launching a new group leadership excellence program next month. And it's going to be a cohort-like training with like-minded individuals talking about some of the topics that Kerry and I have discussed today. And I've got a special invitation for those Thrive members, and I'll shoot folks an email out after. But if anybody has questions about what this offering is and what this 4-month bi-weekly leadership journey is with like-minded executives, please feel free to email me at my very long email address, melissa@pinnacleenterprisesgroup.com, or DM me through LinkedIn and we can set up a one-on-one. So lastly, again, I want to say a giant kudos and thank you to Kerry, thank you to Highgate, and thank you to all of you and Thrive for joining us today. And happy International Women's Day on Friday, and continue to celebrate each other throughout the month. Thank you, everyone.
Aw.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks to you both. And for those who are still here, we will be sending out some follow-up emails with some of the questions and the offer from Melissa, as well as the recording. So we really appreciate you joining us today and hope to see you next time.
And thank you, Rachel, so much.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.